Hey guys, welcome to Girl Meets Screen. My name's Norma, your host of whatever, and today we are talking Bridgerton Season 3, Part 1. See how quickly my menu changes. Netflix. Part 1, Part 2, a month apart? For what? They trolls. They be trolling. They're like, oh, y'all was mad about weekly releases? Okay. Let's split it into 2 and then put a month in. Why? For I'm gonna move on because I'm still gonna watch. So you, let me stop playing games. Okay, so it's a new season, right? We've got some new girls to debut. We've got Eloise and Francesca still on the market for the Bridgertons. Alrighty, so Polin is here. Everybody's outside getting ready to go introduce Francesca to society. Colin has arrived. The girls are flocking, okay? F-boy energy to the max. Colin's greeting his family. He looks back, sees Penelope looking at him from her house, and just turns around. And you're like, I'm sorry, sir. Weren't you the one talking about her? Like, what? Why are you giving her the cold shoulder? But we later find out that he was writing her letters and she wasn't replying. And the reason we find that out is Penelope decides that she's going into society and she wants to find a man. I'm assuming she feels alone maybe and thinks like, well, if I have a husband, like, you know, society will look at me different. I don't know what's going through her head, but we have a full change. Okay, we got Penelope now with the sexy curls and the sexy dark colors, and she's here to find a man. She meets a man named Lord Debling, we'll talk about him later, and Cressida, mean girl from last season, like rips her dress and she runs off, and that's when Colin runs behind her and he's like, what is the deal, girl? Like, what's going on here? He's like, what happened? What did I do? Like, I wrote you letters, you didn't reply. Like, you're not speaking to me. What's going on? And she basically lets it be known that she overheard him talking-ish in the last season. And he's like trying to explain, but she's just like, nah, I really didn't think you could be that cruel. Like, you were my friend. And she leaves crying. She gets home and she pulls out that Miss Whistledown feather, okay? She's writing something. Later on in the episode, Colin apologizes, they talk, like they're now cool. Things aren't going so great with her and Guy, so he agrees to like help her find a husband, a suitable husband. So they're cool. But then she realizes that Lady Whistledown came out that day. And so now everybody's reading about Colin and how his persona is fake. This person he's pretending to be coming back from his travels is not who he really is. Moving on to Eloise. Obviously she knows who Lady Whistledown is now, so they beefing. So now she's in society though, because of what was written about her and that dude and what happened to her family, because of what's written about her family. So she is now just like maintaining status quo. She's in her maintaining status quo era. So she is now reading romance novels because they're more realistic. She's friends with Cressida now. We get a lot of them kind of teaching each other almost. There's moments of contention between the two where she's wrong, then Cressida's wrong. She's right, then Cressida's right. A little bit of everything. So like it's an interesting dynamic. Eloise is now like in society. Like I think it seems like she's not necessarily trying to get a husband right away. She's trying to like fade into the background, but not. I think she just maybe wants somebody who will still let her be herself. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure her out because I'm like, is she trying to be a spinster or she's just like trying to avoid it till she can't anymore? It's interesting because this is her second season, and obviously like as the seasons go on you get less and less desirable. Lady Bridgerton is presenting Francesca to the queen. Francesca, she's not exactly Eloise where she's like, I'll be a spinster, that would be wonderful, but she's also not Daphne who was like, I'm gonna be everything you want me to be, okay? I'm gonna be the best society girl you ever seen, okay? Like, she's like right in the middle where it's like, I do want a husband, I do want to leave, like I do want to follow the norms, but like I want to follow them quietly. So we have the Mondrits, and they make me nervous. All the scenes with them, I'm just anxious because I'm waiting for like the next scene of them to be him getting caught up for throwing the fight. Like I'm just like waiting for something because I'm like, they wouldn't kill. Obviously they knew about it because that's why they killed Lord Featherington. So like, are they coming for it? Like, what's going on here? What's happening? I must know. Like, I'm so anxious about their downfall because it has to happen at some point, right? But anywho, speaking of the Mondriches, they are now like in society. So Lady Mondrich had an aunt who passed, and because there were no males in the closer relatives, her son is next in line, so he gets everything the Lady of Kent had. So now he is the Baron of Kent. So they move them into like this beautiful big house. They have all these services and rules and things to follow. Moving in episode 2, let's start off with the Featheringtons. There were some things that happened in episode 1, but I'm trying to chunk everything together because I don't want to be like, and this person, and then that person, and then back to this one, and that. So I'm trying to chunk things together in a way that still follows and makes sense. Basically, Lady Featherington has forged a document from like their cousin Jack or whatever who left, the guy that was like doing the fake jewelry, saying that everything will be left to the next male heir from one of her daughters. So they need to hurry up and get pregnant because there's somebody who's like, whoever's in charge of making sure things are legit, I don't know, he's suspicious of her. And so he's like, well, you better hope an heir comes out before I authenticate this document or whatever. And she's like, no worries, because it's real. But she's panicking. She's like, y'all gotta make a baby. Y'all gotta make a boy. Now, hilariously, she's talking to her daughters repeatedly about like, have you been having sex? Like, what's going on? Like, have you been making this baby? And one of them is like, it's just not enjoyable. And she's like, okay, listen, women are a little bit different from men. So when he inserts himself, and one of the daughters is like, what do you mean inserts himself? She ain't been doing it, y'all. She didn't know what that. It's so crazy to me. So crazy to me that these girls literally are like, what is sex? What is that? How does that happen? What's that stuff coming out? Like, I have no idea. Like, the Daphne stuff was crazy. So, anywho, mom has to now make sure they're doing it right. This episode, we have Colin training, teaching Penelope, whatever, all the things. So, he's talking her through kind of just like, he's kind of like, be yourself. Like, why do you feel so awkward? Why do you feel so uncomfortable? Just talk, like, whatever. And yeah, so she goes, she tries and fails a few times. And then I believe at some point, Colin and Eloise are talking, and he lets her know, like, I'm helping her find a husband. She actually wants a husband. Because I think Eloise was asking how she was after the whole ripped dress situation. Which it's like, Eloise, baby, you got to figure out what team you want to be on. Because if you don't want to be her friend, you got to figure out how to stop caring about her. Because it doesn't make, and now you're just being an a-hole a little bit. Like, because it doesn't make sense to be like, no, we're not friends, but I'm just checking to make sure you're okay. But calm down. We're not friends. It's like, what are you doing? Leave the girl alone or don't. But you got to pick one. Eloise is complaining to Cressida about the whole situation. The other little minions of theirs over here. And so word gets around. And now everybody's talking about Penelope. And Penelope's like, oh my God. So she runs off and Eloise is like, shit. And so then she tells her brother, like, it might have been me. And he was like, what the hell? Like, you wanted to see her fall. I don't know what's going on with y'all, but why would you do that? So Penelope is back at home on her windowsill, just like, maybe this is just where I'm supposed to be forever, right? She's given up. Colin ends up going to check on Penelope where they speak, and she asks him to kiss her. She's like, I don't want to, like, die never having had anything. Like, give me something, please. And so he kisses her. So now we're moving into the last episode, and he has caught feelings. Colin has caught feelings. He's trying to figure it out. He talks to his mom about it, hypothetically, of course, speaking of Francesca, and like, how did you start off as friends and make it? She's like, basically just somebody has to take the risk or whatever. That makes him want to tell her. But then we have Lord Debling, who once again, we'll get into, interrupts for a dance, and he decides not to tell her. Let's get into Lord Debling. So he's someone who likes nature, is gone a lot of time out of the year, going to hunt and do things like that. But he's here. He's trying to find a way. Lord Debling takes a liking to Penelope. When the whole dress ripping thing happens, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Cressida like rips her dress because she gets jealous that Lord Debling is taking an interest in her. And so now we have this Penelope versus Cressida situation going on. And Lord Debling seems more interested in Penelope, but like he's kind of also, keeping the options open, getting to know the girls. We have Benedict falling for, I think it was Lady Tilly Arnold or something like that. He's falling for this lady right here. We're back on Francesca, and she is sparkling, honey. She's basically the diamond of the season. because Lady Danbury sets her up, okay? She has her like playing the piano at one of the balls, and she tells the queen, like, you should go look at such and such. And when she goes, she sees her playing. And she's basically like, girl, you out here playing at my party because you don't care. You're just being yourself, da-da-da. Like, really likes it. So now she's the sparkling gem. Essentially, when the queen feels that Francesca's ready, she'll introduce her to, like, the best suitor of, like, all of them for that season, right? So, like, she's the past two, you know, she's introduced the prince, her grandson, nephew, whatever, to Daphne and, you know, eventually Edwina. But yeah, so it's kind of doing that with Francesca, which leads us to Francesca and Lord Samadani. These names are naming, okay? So yes, the queen feels she's ready, introduces her to Lord Samadani, who was traveling, I guess. And so they're getting along well. He seems kind, but we are noticing like differences. So at one point he's like, oh, we have a lot in common. We both have 7 siblings. And she's like, yeah. And she's kind of talking about how overwhelming it can get, how like she can't wait to have peace and quiet. And he's like, actually the opposite. Like, I love having all the, you know, noise and chaos and energy around. I want 7 kids myself or 8 kids myself, whatever he says. And she's like, okay. And then she leaves. She like runs off. Okay, so we have the whole Penelope versus Cressida situation going on for Lord Debling. Eloise has helped Cressida like read a book on his favorite bird that's coming extinct, all this stuff. So she's talking to him about this bird. Penelope's trying to like get in on it. She's like, oh, don't overlook the sparrow and regular birds. And he's like, okay. Penelope says she loves grass. She's trying to like be something she's not to get him. But we can see it's clear he's already interested in her just being herself. Because at one point when the rumor comes out, we see him approach her and she's so like, out, like just kind of giving up and is just feeling crappy, right? So she's being all like self-deprecating and like, oh, whatever. She's being herself talking to him. And he likes her. They're just kind of going back and forth, like trying to get him. And he's just talking to all of them there. Eloise is there looking uncomfortable as ever. And we have this big hot air balloon, this big revolutionary situation going on with the air balloon. But then one of the Featherington sisters end up like pushing her husband and he hits one of the like anchored cords and it falls off. And then Colin's like, everybody help me. And he like runs up and basically like pulls it back down. It was almost going to hit Penelope because she tripped and fell when they were all getting out of the way. So he saves Penelope, but then so does Lord Debling, kind of. He like runs in and like covers her because they thought it was going to hit her. Then Cressida decides that her ankle broke, or like she hurt her ankle in the kerfuffle. So he's like, oh, come on, like let's go sit down. And so, you know, Penelope's left kind of feeling like, oh, I think I lost. Last thing of importance in this episode is that we have Lady Bridgerton meeting someone, and it turns out it is Lady Danbury's brother, and she's mad at him. And I'm gonna have to watch Queen Charlotte again to remember like why she would have been mad at him. I think it was the whole like making her marry that person and like the way all of that went, but I could be wrong. She's also upset that he's like a womanizer and he's like here and stuff. But I guess we'll find out more in part 2. I did say last episode was the last episode, but it's not. This one is. In this episode, we have each sister discovering pregnancy symptoms and realizing they may be pregnant. One of them has like sore boobs and the other one's like throwing up and stuff. So yeah, as you may or may not remember, it's a race to who has a boy and gets the estate and becomes like the actual Lady Featherington. So needless to say, Debling has kind of put his focus on Penelope. Cressida is let down, honey. They're talking, they're having dances. There's like this book situation and he goes to her and talks about one of the books that she has in her hands. And so now he's really feeling her. At one point, they're talking about the type of book she likes. And she's like, I'm going to sound like such a loser. She doesn't say that, but like essentially, like, you know, because I like romance books, blah, blah, blah. And happily all that. And he goes, is there a book where like the husband can go off and do his hunting and the wife is happy to stay and manage the estate? Penelope is like, you know, oh, if the woman had her own interests that would keep her occupied, that could work. And then he's like, oh, you know, and he's like, oh, well, hypothetic, like in this book, how would one ask for her hand if there are no males in the picture? And she's like, oh, I guess he'd ask her mom. And what would she say if he did? And she's like, oh, you'll have to read the book. It's very cute moment. I'm making it sound awful, but you know, she's that you'll have to read the book was intense, baby. I was like, oh. At one point, the mom comes into a conversation they're having with the sisters, be like, they wanted to say bye. Oh, like, it's so wonderful. She's usually always sitting by that window, so thank you for bringing her out, blah, blah. And he asks her, like, why she likes that window, and she's like, it's just a beautiful view, yada, yada, yada. Well, we move on. It's supposed to be the night that he's supposed to propose. Colin was going to stay home, but his mom lets him know, like, oh, yeah, she's being proposed to tonight. Her mom will stop talking about it, whatever. So he ends up showing up. He interrupts a dance between her and Debling to be like, you don't know him, you can't marry him, you can't say yes. And she's kind of like, what are you, like, what is going on here, sir? She's like, I didn't think that getting your help meant you could shut my shit down too. Like, what are you doing? And while they're dancing, Cressida takes this as her chance and is like, oh, I'll finish the dance with you, Lord Debling. I would never leave, you know, like, I would never leave you by yourself, like high and dry, whatever. And she's stirring the pot as they're dancing, you know, and she mentions that the Bridgertons live directly across the street. And so he remembers the mom mentioning the window, and he realizes she was actually looking at Colin. And so, yeah, her and Colin she just goes off on him. She's like, what is good with you? Like, whoa. So they argue, and she walks off from Colin. Lord Debling intercepts her, and she's like, no, like, it's not like that. And he's like, yeah, that window, bitch. Like, I know what you're looking at. And he was like, I cannot have a wife and then leave her for 3 years knowing that she got feelings for somebody else. That's crazy. I do have to say, I kind of want Lord Debling with Cressida. I don't know why. And I feel like that's probably how it'll end up, unless they just have him, like, leave and disappear, which would make no sense. But I just, something about them just makes sense. I feel like they'll get each other really well. Cressida is fairly independent, so I feel like she could handle, like, being alone. And while she may not be, like, as mean and like her parents, I think that she still kind of has that I do want to live in society, right? Like that status of, like, yes, this is my estate and I handle it like a boss. Like, she still very much gives that energy. Now enters Lord Kilmartin. Francesca saw him when she, like, ran out to get air at one point with Lord Samadani, and meets him, and she's enchanted. She's feeling it. They don't know each other yet, but he shows up to the house as a caller and sits down, and they just sit in silence. And it was such a funny moment because, like, her family's just watching. So it's her mom, Eloise, Hyacinth, and Gregory, and they're just watching, and they're like, oh, they're not talking. And you have Eloise, who's like, wow, that's, like, an amazing method. I never even thought of that, to, like, avoid getting a man without, like, just flat out making yourself look bad. And then the rest are like, well, how are they supposed to get to know each other? And then Lord Samadani, I can't even say his name, but Lord Samadani comes and interrupts, and he takes his leave. Later on, Francesca and her mom run into Lord Kilmartin in the streets, like outside, and they're talking, and he's being kind of standoffish. She's a little confused by it. Then he just, like, walks off. They, like, talk, he says, like, oh, that music sounds beautiful. And she's like, actually, no. And she states, like, the things she would change about it. And he just walks off. He just leaves. And she's like, what the fuck? And the mom was asking her if she was interested in him. And so when that happened, she was like, to answer your question, no. It's like, yeah, you are. But okay. So then we have everybody at the ball. At the ball where the whole Colin and Lord Debling thing happens with Penelope. Francesca is dancing with Lord Samadani. I don't think I'm saying any of these names right. Lord Samadani. The dance ends. He's like, let me go get you some lemonade. And he comes back with lemonade, but she's like, gotta go. Why? Because Lord Kilmartin comes to say hi to her, and she's like, what game is this, sir? I am so confusion. And he's like, sorry, I left so abruptly. I was actually doing this. And he gives it to her, and he altered that music that the person was playing with her changes. And so she's like, gotta go. And she runs off home to, like, play the music. And the mom, like, finds her, and she's like, dude, what happened, girl? What's going on? And she was like, he changed the music. And then she's, like, happily playing it. And the mom is like, oh, God, another one. At this point, y'all want the queen to hate y'all, Bridgertons. Because dang, why y'all doing your mama like that? She's the one that got to deal with the queen after. We get a little bit more insight into Cressida's life. Her dad, very mean. Her mom, very mean, too. But I think it's more so, like, I have to, otherwise your dad will be mean to me. So, like, I got to get this together. So she's they want her to get a suitor. And basically, if she doesn't, the dad's going to match her up with one of his friends, which is weird. Ew. But that's very of the times. So we're going to leave it alone. Eloise comes to visit her. The dad's pissed, tells her to go. And then she overhears him telling her, like, you're not hanging out with that girl ever again, because, you know, it's her second year in society too, and he's kind of like, you need to focus on getting a man, baby. You need to be here with it. But the next day she sees her, and Eloise is like, should you be sitting with me? And she's like, girl, you gonna have to deal with it. It's fine. We continue to see their friendship develop, which is, it's a nice friendship. Like I said, they did very well at making us empathize with Cressida and like her a little bit, maybe, sort of. This ends with Colin chasing after Penelope. She's like left in her carriage. He chases the carriage non-stop. He gets in. She's like, or he wants to get in. She's like, leave me alone. He's like, just let me in. She lets him in, and he's talking to her. And she's like, you literally ruined my proposal. The one good, like, that shit could have been good. What is, like, you just don't want me to be happy. What are you doing? Like, he's like, just say you didn't get married. Like, say you didn't say yes, or that he didn't propose. And she's like, he didn't propose because of you. He thinks you have feelings for me. And then he tells her he does. And she's kind of like, and he's like, I do. I love you. You know, a whole monologue, whole beautiful thing. And she's like, I really would like to be more than friends with you. And when I tell y'all they started making out, okay? They was about to do it in this dang carriage. Colin's hands were doing things to places. And then the carriage stops, and he knocks to let him know. And they're like, oh my gosh. And then he kind of just gets out saying nothing. And she's like, Colin, what are you doing? What's going on? And he's like, aren't you coming? She's like, is your family going to see me? And he's like, are you marrying me or not? Which I would have been like, not like that. See you tomorrow. And left. But yeah. Needless to say, we know Penelope get out that carriage. Okay, it ends like that, like with her just staring at him like, what? And so we get a little teaser for the next 4 episodes, and obviously it's basically Eloise being like, girl, you better tell him before I will. You have until X point, yada yada yada. Now I will say, before I noticed that there was a teaser and watched it, honestly, I was kind of hoping that Penelope would have just told her herself. To me, watching these 4 episodes, it felt like that was a direction it would have made sense that it headed in, if that makes sense, of her kind of being like, okay, look, all cards on the table, da-da-da-da-da, right? Like, so he's out the carriage, are you gonna marry me or not? And she's like, yes. They get inside, and she's like, okay, listen, and like tells him. I feel like that would have been fitting, it would have made sense, but it doesn't seem like that's what happened, based on like Eloise being like, I'm gonna tell him, if you don't like what's wrong with you, you're gonna marry him. Are you nuts? Yada yada. Now what I will say is, I hate that it's kind of headed in a basic direction of like, and he's gonna be mad at his sister because she didn't tell him and she knew all this time, and that's why you were mad at her. And I would have liked it to go a different way, right? Like, I would have liked if she just told him. I don't know, but I guess that's the only outcome in terms of him and Eloise that can happen. And of course it's gonna happen because like they were already beefing, and so now he's gonna be mad at her again. It just feels a little basic. It feels a little, I don't want to watch that. But I will. I sure will. The other 2 main things that happen in the teaser are that Queen Charlotte is now offering money to anyone who figures out who Whistledown is. Cressida is determined to get that money. And then it ends with Penelope passing out. Like, she's with Colin, she can't breathe, and she passes out. So I don't know, man. Interested to see what direction that heads in. I hope you guys enjoyed this chaotic review of part 1 for season 3. I'm very excited for part 2. Very excited to share it. Very happy that it'll be summer break and I'll be able to watch it as soon as it comes out. Like the video if you enjoyed. Comment down below. I want to know what your predictions are of the fallout of this. Subscribe for more content like this, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.